Hi everyone, welcome to this Pro Copywriters webinar. My name's Leif Kendall and I'm a freelance copywriter when I'm not organizing things at Pro Copywriters and the copywriting conference. And we're joined today by Jackie Barrie. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Leif.
Cool. Yes, Jackie is also a freelance copywriter with tons of experience, and Jackie's also a trainer. And so today we're going to be talking about how do you survive a crisis? How do you get through, what we're all experiencing right now? Maybe finding clients, losing clients, changing the niche you work in or the services you offer. Perhaps kind of reorganizing yourself to take better advantage of the work that's available, and looking at your rates as well. And again, these are just some ideas. And so, Jackie, I'm sure you have other ideas of challenges that people will be facing.
Oh, yes, there's plenty to say. And I love that you said, I have tons of experience, because that's clearly how experience is weighed. It's weighed by the ton.
Jackie, how many pandemics have you freelanced through?
Well, that's a great question. The last global pandemic at this level was 100 years ago, and I'm not that old. But anything that has happened in the world ever can happen again. So none of us expected to be living through a global pandemic. And yet here we are. It's interesting because 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had video calling. We wouldn't have had the kind of technology to be connected the way we have been. So in some ways, it's a good thing. We've got social media too, which spreads news, fake news, which could be called a bad thing. But there's not a fat lot we can do about it. What I have done is freelance through 2 recessions so far, because after being a copywriter in-house for a long time, I have been self-employed nearly 20 years, and the economy certainly dipped badly a couple of times, and yet I am still here. The pattern that I observed with the copywriting side of what I do rather than the training side, in March, it felt as though everybody went into shock. I got busier than ever because I had a lot of regular clients who needed me to do crisis communications for them. Then in April, the cancellations started. So from the beginning, when I thought, I work from home anyway, I can do copywriting, people are still going to need it, that won't make any difference to me. I got some cancellations, probably 4 out of 10. That was a surprise. Some of them weren't very kind either. One of them was just a message to say, oh, we're taking it back in-house. And by the way, will you train us how? At no extra charge, to which my answer was, well, sorry, you're welcome to take it in-house, but I can't help you with free training. And then one of my clients got the virus and ended up in and out of hospital, so her work's now on hold. And happily, the rest of them have carried on. What I've noticed in May is that inquiries have reduced. People, I think, in April started thinking, oh, I can do this myself, it's only writing copy. And then they've realized perhaps they can't. They've realized this is going on for a long time, that the payment they need help than they is, and inquiries are starting to come back in, probably at half the rate they usually do, but there's business there and it is in.
Now, Lorraine's asking, so she also does training on copywriting, and one client has asked her to discount her rates for online training. Should she?
I have been asked this question before, and I also do online training, as you may know. And what I have found in the speaking and training community is clients are asking that question, but the only discount they get is the cost of travel and accommodation. The value they get from online training and the outputs are exactly the same. And so the value and the price that you charge should be exactly the same, less expenses.
So Jackie, Jonathan Wilcock he's saying that he's seen people offering their services for free to help during the pandemic, and while he understands the altruistic logic, he's wondering if that's sending out the wrong message.
Yeah, completely agree that offering things free as a good is a nice thing to do. and probably the right and proper thing to do. And I've got stuff that normally already existed, put extra time into creating it. I have, for the duration, made freely available rather than hidden behind a sort of paywall. But the mistake is to give away free what you would normally charge for. You still need to value your own time, skill set, expertise. Pricing is exactly the same now as it was 3 months ago and will be 3 months ahead. It's more difficult to compete if somebody has budgets and they get offered to them free that they don't want to pay for, and you're trying to charge for that same thing. Then clearly that prospective client with a tight budget is in a dilemma. Do they take the free help or do they pay for proper quality? Because I'm here trying to advise freelance copywriters how to survive this crisis, I would say don't do discounting, don't give away stuff. What you can do is give away an extra thing free, but not your usual thing, if that makes sense. Just to give you an example, yesterday I did a free webinar for one of my training courses in order to upsell the pre-recorded version of the training course. And it's not the normal route for selling the pre-recorded training course, but it absolutely worked and was completely worth an hour of my free time. So you have to consider strategically what you can offer free and what you charge for.
I've seen a few people who say that they've been furloughed from their work, and then they're offering their time to help people out. So again, it seems like a nice thing to do, but it's very unfortunate for any freelancers in that community, because suddenly there's even less work than there might have been. Now, of course, it might be that the potential client who uses a free kind of furloughed person might have had no budget to actually pay a proper freelancer. But yes, I completely agree. I think it's not ideal. I think it makes things just harder for freelancers. If the market is saturated with people offering things for free.
So here are my ideas about being flexible. First of all, what you can do, and what I am doing, is recognizing that some of my clients are having cash flow problems and that they might not need to be marketing as heavily in the crisis as they normally would, because their customers haven't got any money, or their customers are stuck at home, or their customers are furloughed, or not getting government support, or whatever. So we are really having to adapt with what's going on. So I, with my first round of invoicing, when this started, sent a PS, or rather my accounts email address that was handled by my virtual assistant, had a PS added, we understand that lots of people are facing cash flow issues at the moment. Of course, we're happy to be flexible about payment terms. Though I had who came back and said, we know we owe you this, we carry on working with you, but as you know, everything's on hold at the moment. Will it be okay to spread it over 3 months? And my reply was absolutely fine. And in fact, they paid the first third, and yesterday they paid the second 2/3 all at once. And we've kept a good working relationship without me having to get hard and heavy and chase them for it. Absolutely don't drop fees, be flexible instead. One thing you could do is offer them a payment holiday, a bit like mortgage providers have been doing, I believe, for some people. And that way you can continue doing regular work, because what you could do is contact existing clients and say to them, oh, times might be tough for you in your particular sector at the moment. We anticipate an uplift. We don't know when it's going to come, but when it does, you're going to be really busy. So why not carry your regular work now so it's still prepared, but you don't need to pay me later? And now, obviously, that depends on your own cash flow situation, whether you can afford to do that. But if you want to keep the relationship good and have that client remember you as somebody who is helpful and really, to use a cheesy cliche, being there for them, that's a suggestion that will help that situation for the future as well as now. Just to tell you a story from the past, this was a travel industry client who you might remember when the Icelandic volcano erupted. He personally repatriated all his customers on his credit card, which meant that he ran out of money and he couldn't pay me what he normally would. And initially I did the gentle chasing process via email and then eventually a call, and he so stressed, he was quite shouty and sweary, and it was quite an unpleasant phone call and I spoke to my business coach about it, say, what do I do? Because normally I'd go down the debt collection route. And she said to me, well, if he had the money, he'd pay you. He's always paid you in the past. If he had it, he would pay you now. And he has spent all his money on the repatriating his customers. He's going to pay HMRC, he's going to pay his mortgage, he's going to pay any number of people before he pays you. So instead of chasing and building up the levels of stress, why don't you do this? Why don't you send him a card? So I gritted my teeth and I bought a nice card with a sunflower on it. And I wrote in it, thank you for always paying me promptly in the past. I know that if things were different, you'd pay me punctually. Again, I understand times are tough for you at the moment and I trust you to pay me when you can. Well, and he was so relieved. He wrote to thank me. Ultimately, his business did fail, but a year later he launched a new business, a Phoenix business, came back to me and said, I know I owe you under the old company, so you can load all your invoices until you make back the money you lost. Well, I would never have had that response if I had used the stick approach instead of the carrot approach. So there's around you being the one who is generous about it, helping your existing clients authentically, that actually benefits you in the long run.
So a few people are asking about starting up as a freelance copywriter right now, and wondering if it's going to be harder for them, if it's a terrible idea. What do you reckon? And I'd also be interested to hear from everyone else on the call, because I imagine, well, we know some of you have lots of experience. Yeah, what do you all reckon? Is it a terrible time, terrible idea, or could it work?
There will be a lot of people starting up as freelance copywriters at the moment. However, being a freelance copywriter is a great thing and you can make a living at it. And if you have the right set and you approach it the right way, long term you'll be fine. But it is probably harder to start in a recession when there's a lot of competition than it is to start at other times.
One thing to consider, I mean, on the surface, yes, it's a terrible time to start anything because no one quite knows what's going on and there's all this change and a lack of business generally. But I know a few freelancers who have gone and found regular jobs. So they're off the market. And, ordinarily there would be lots of people going freelance. But right now is not a very appealing or attractive time to go freelance. So it could be that actually, instead of joining a very crowded field, it could be thinning out a little bit. So, there's different ways of looking at it. There's always going to be pros and cons. And some people would tell you it's never a good time to start a business, never a good time to go freelance. You just have to do it. So, but I can't make any promises.
If you're starting up, one of my thoughts is that to look at which sectors are doing well. I told a travel story earlier on, and obviously travel, hospitality, some sectors of retail are really struggling. But there is a link which I think Leif can share, which is to e-commerce sectors that are doing well. It's some data from March, and it's got the top 100 businesses that are thriving at the moment, business types, and the 100 that are not. So it's data from Stackline. So if you're starting up, it would make sense to target the fast growing categories, don't you think? Maybe that will give you an idea about where it's worth focusing your attention. Are there any other ideas, Leif, that have come in?
Yeah, let's see. So Ben Masters recommends focusing on your areas of expertise and experience and specializing early on. Let's see, I think that's the main suggestion we've got. I noticed that the number one category is disposable gloves. So if you have any particular experience or expertise in disposable gloves, you're onto a winner. But yeah, it's interesting to see. Oh wow, so anything related to kind of travel and so on, going out is plummeting.
Well, that's e-commerce data, but online, if you do a bit of research, which all good copywriters do anyway, you'll find writers that are doing well right now. And if that is your niche, then that would be a useful way to target potential clients, I'd say. If you're an existing copywriter, it's going to be easier to reactivate old clients or former clients and current clients than it is to find new ones while people are careful about spending money. So my thought about marketing at the moment, marketing yourself this is, as well as marketing for brands and clients that you're writing for, is that a one-to-one approach, human to human, is working better at the moment than a one-to-many marketing and advertising approach. And that means rather than bulk messaging your existing network to say, buy my copywriting service, I mean, that would never have worked anyway, but it's more an individual phone call perhaps or web call to say, how are you? How are you doing? And as part of that conversation, you can leak the information. Well, you know what we do, what help do you need? So it's not so much a hard sell approach. And just to give you an example, I did a talk last weekend, and it was on a Zoom call, and people in the chat were writing lovely, lovely things about the talk. And I thought, well, what I would like is for some of those people to write me LinkedIn recommendations, which I can then leverage in my own marketing for similar talks. And I put a post in the Facebook group where all these attendees were to request LinkedIn recommendations. And sure enough, well, and to thank them for their kind words and so on. After a week, not a single one. I should know better. So instead, I messaged them each separately from within LinkedIn to thank them for their kind words, reminded them what they'd said, and asked for a recommendation that way. And sure enough, they have all responded positively. And now I've got some powerful testimonials about that particular talk that I can use. So I think the one-to-one approach is really powerful.
Okay, Maeve was asking about changing payment terms. So specifically, a client was asking if they could pay fortnightly for 6 months, but Maeve thought that was too high of a risk because it was a new business and it was a big project. What would your response be to that kind of request?
I haven't had that particular question from anybody. I would rather have money in my hand now, obviously. My usual payment terms, especially with a new business or a new client, is 50% upfront before I write a word. So if your gut feeling is there's a risk with this particular situation, then that is probably what I would do. I might relax the 50% rule, but I'd certainly get an amount of money before I wrote a single word. So that a bit of the risk is on them and not just on you. Very happy to accept stagger payments. Fortnightly for 6 months does feel like a long time because, as you know, with copywriting, most of the work is front loaded. You have to do all the thinking before you write the first paragraph. And that's why, just to share my normal payment terms, which I haven't changed, 50% upfront, 25% if there's a delay of a month, and the balance on completion. And that is because it's front-loaded work. So if the project never reaches an end, I've been paid 75% of it, the fee, which feels like a fairer financial transaction than just being paid half, even though I've done 3/4 of the work. I will flex my terms for people that I already know, regulars I'm talking about. They can stagger their payments. and I'm very happy for them to do it. But it's not to let them, to use a metaphor, keep kicking the football down the path. So they have to stick to it, otherwise all the rules are off and the whole amount becomes due.
But I had a corporate whose terms were 60 days starting from the last day of the month that you sent your invoice. And I got in touch with the marketing manager who booked me to say, you understand I'm a sole trader, cash flow is important to me, my normal terms are 15 days and yours are nearly 90, so is there anything that can be done? And she said, I completely understand, here's what we'll do, you invoice me before you start the work in full, and I'll put you on 30-day terms. And the result of that was that thousands of pounds worth of work that I got, and she trusted me completely to deliver, which was lovely, even though we hadn't actually worked together much at that point. And so even if you're facing a big corporate or an agency that has their own terms, it is worth having the conversation and trying to negotiate a deal that gets you what you want. You don't have to accept what they give you.
Joel makes a good point about making sure you've got your terms and conditions on your website. That's something that can help when it comes to getting clients to pay up. And I absolutely agree with that, Joel. It's a little thing, but making sure you communicate your terms and conditions with your clients. Maybe put it at the bottom of proposals. These things. I think a lot of freelancers end up feeling like they just want to be, easy to work with. They want to be kind of friendly and convenient, and not put up too many kind of barriers to working with them. But having things like a contract and terms and conditions, doesn't make you a difficult person. It just makes you professional. And
absolutely. And I would say it doesn't stop you being friendly. I'd also say on the Pro Copywriters site, you've got the page of suggested rates, you've got some terms and conditions that other copywriters have kindly shared. But what you have to do is sort of take that control and realize that you do have some power as a freelancer. But by having that confidence, you get more respect and you don't get messed around so much. By charging a proper price, they're more likely to accept your copy and not make too many changes. They're more likely to treat you well. And it's all about self-respect before clients respect you. So I completely agree, Joel, about sending T&Cs and sending them with the quote, not afterwards with the invoice. And mine are, as you would imagine, simply written to the extent that a contract lawyer actually uses them as a case study on a course that she runs about writing contracts to prove you can have T&Cs that are copywritten, written nicely in simple plain English, as well as protecting you in court.
Absolutely. And I think your contract doesn't have to be scary or confusing. It doesn't have to be 5 pages long. Yes. So yes, have a look at on the Pro Copywriters site on the resources page. So we have this example that was provided by John McGarvey, and there's also a brief template. There's a couple of examples of brief templates and a few other documents that are free to download. Fantastic. So we've got a few people asking about finding clients and how, what kind of approach to use, which tactics are best. Someone's see, Anna's asking about cold emailing. Joel is wondering about doing a direct mail campaign to launch his freelance business. Sam is asking about how do you approach new potential clients. So there's obviously a lot of elements there, but what do you think about finding clients at the moment, Jackie?
Well, normally I would have said networking, go out and about and meet people, because 90% of my work comes from someone I once met somewhere, sometime, and it's all word of mouth. Word of mouth marketing is the most powerful. Then I found when I was starting up that cold emails didn't work for me. I used to maybe find a website that was full of typos and email them to say that their website was letting them down and did they want me to proofread it. That never worked. My expression was, and you can take this if you want, my concern is that your website doesn't do you justice, because that's a message that's flattery and criticism all wrapped up in the same statement. What did work was when someone else wrote to say, oh, there's mistakes in your website. I know a brilliant person who can proofread it for you. Shall I connect you? So you might want to buddy up with somebody who can try and make that happen. But cold emails to people that are withholding budgets, have never heard of you, it's not going to work. But warm emails can work. How you do this is by second level LinkedIn search.
You go to LinkedIn and you do a people search and you tick the box for second level connections. That tells you who you know that is connected to the person on your target list. And then you pick up the phone and you talk to them.
And LinkedIn lets you do it online, but I think it's better to have a human conversation. Ring them up and say, LinkedIn tells me you so and so. How well do you know them? What are they like? And then you can say, I would really love to work with them because, and you give a nice rationale, because you're asking your friend to make a warm introduction for you. You would then ask your friend, can we arrange coffee? Can we do lunch? At the moment, it might be more, can we hop on a video call together? Or would you introduce email or through LinkedIn's functionality? What you do then is get a warm introduction, and that person, that target client that you're after, is much more likely to take your call because you've been referred to them by somebody that they also know. And that, for me, beats cold emails hands down. Picking up the idea about a direct marketing campaign, I come from the home shopping industry, so direct mail was really the roots of one of the ways I learned how to write. But people stopped when email came along and it's so cheap and print and paper and postage is expensive. However, that is why direct can work. But what I would say is, rather than just a plain letter in an envelope, make it stand out by making it lumpy mail, not junk mail. And that means including something, an item that will make you stand out. I'll give you some examples. I heard of who sent an aspirin wrapped in silver foil inside the envelope, and was something about, we take away IT headaches. Well, I don't think sending drugs through the post is probably a wise move, but I ate for a flower one targeting hotels for wedding flowers. I did a packet of sunflower seeds. It's cheap, it's easy to post. She was able to letters. I think she only had 20 or 25 that she was after. Phone them up weeks later with a follow-up to say, did you get my letter? They say, oh, what letter? Remember, it was the one with sunflower seeds in. Then she, oh, I gave them to my children, and yeah, lovely. And then she's in a conversation. A direct mail story for one of my regular, we normally would send them things, emails, monthly letters, and 1 August we decided to give them a holiday, and from these emails, instead we sent them, I don't know if you remember the caramel advert from years ago, which was a squirrel relaxing under a tree, and so we sent them a Cadbury's caramel, relax, you don't have to read our newsletter this month. Trouble was, it was a really hot August and the chocolate melted. It wasn't such a gift after all.
Just thoughts on approaching new clients. I think the best way, and I say this on every webinar that we do where we talk about finding clients, but I think the best way to approach new clients is to not approach them at all, but to let them approach you, because you don't know which of the 10 million companies in the UK need a copywriter right now, but they do, and they will use search engines to go looking for them, or they'll use LinkedIn, or they'll ask their colleagues and contacts for recommendations. So I would try to make yourself findable. Not to say I wouldn't do any kind of outreach at all. I would also try some of that, because making yourself findable takes time, and you could be waiting a few weeks or months for that for that effort to pay off. So yes, in the meantime, try anything you can to kind of stand out. But if you do email anyone, try to follow it up with something a bit more personal, a bit more meaningful. And if you do email somebody out of the blue, make sure you get their name right, offer them something genuinely of value. I get lots of emails from people saying, hi, do you have any work? Because I need more money. I've literally had an email that says that, and I get lots that have very, very similar messages. People say things like, I want to expand my portfolio, or I want to broaden my client base. Now, that's delightful for them, and I'm really pleased for anyone who wants to do that. But there's nothing in it for me, and that's a terrible pitch to any potential client. So, if you do email somebody out of the blue, understand who they are, what they might be looking for, and how you could kind of fit into what they're doing.
We've probably been all on the receiving end of some terrible marketing messages from brands. And obviously, this is not what we want to do to our clients and potential clients. And there are a couple of blog posts I've written about communicating in a crisis. You might remember the Maslow hierarchy of needs, which is that triangle. And at the bottom of the pyramid, the triangle, is people's physiological, biological needs. And clearly at the beginning of this crisis, that's where many people were at. They were worried, could they get food? Because the shops didn't have everything in stock. Then the next level of the pyramid is about people's safety needs. And of course, people are concerned about their jobs, and therefore they're worried about personal security and health. So a lot of people are operating at the bottom of the pyramid. Then you've got the fact of social distancing, as it's called, and the sense of connection, which we're having to get virtually rather than in person. And a lot of people are struggling with that. So the top of the pyramid, the self-actualization, those are those moments when you feel all's right with the universe and everything is very satisfying about life. It's not that easy to get up there at the moment, and it's not that easy to stay there. Now, it never was easy to stay there, because what would happen the minute you could be in self-actualization temporarily, but the minute that you're hungry or thirsty or need the loo, you drop right back down to the bottom of the pyramid again. So I think it's important to recognize where we are and where our customers and potential clients are and where their customers are. So that is why it's inappropriate to send those messages that are all about me, because the mindset of the people you're writing to is not at that part of the pyramid. Top down is the kind of language that typically companies will write, especially if they don't have good copywriters to help them. And it's all about the company. It's all about the company name. They use the words I, us, we, our. And they're trying to get their message into the brain of their reader. That's the little stick person at the bottom of the drawing. The reader has a thought in their mind, what's in it for me? And the only two words that answer that question are you and your, or the reader's own name. Remember I said earlier on how powerful one-to-one messaging is at the moment. That's really properly authentic and personalized. So if you cross out I, us, we, our top-down language and replace it with you and your writing will instantly be more powerful. And you won't abandon top-down words altogether, of course not, but use you and your 2 or 3 times as much, and it will improve the copy that you write. And save the I, us, we, our to the bottom half or third of the message that you send, because no one cares who you are till they know what you can do for them. And that's my best advice that I would give brands and who are trying to market themselves with the help of copywriters perhaps, and copywriters who are trying to market themselves, is just remember that approach. You have probably all seen all the COVID-19 marketing messages. I prepared a buzzword bingo document just for your own entertainment. It's these words and phrases that have been so overused. This is buzzword bingo document with some empty boxes at the bottom, which is for you to remind yourself what not to write, and you can perhaps have a bit of fun by ticking those off when you see somebody that has used those messages.
Yeah, so they're all very familiar, all oversaturated. Jonathan notes that he can no longer use unprecedented. It's forever ruined. It's lost, I think, to us. We'll have to
It is. There was a graph
cancel it.
actually showing the unprecedented use of unprecedented. I don't know if you've seen that, but you'll find it on Google. It's just an off-the-scale spread of the word unprecedented.
I like Joel. Joel suggested his favorite, I think, coronavirus buzzword is "it's totally fudged," although it doesn't say fudged.
Yes. Meanwhile, what's on screen at the moment is a message from Johnny Bowden as an example of a good bit of copy. And thank you to Lucy Banwell, who shared this with me. And it's written in a nice and I think appropriate way for the current situation. And it's very honest. He's saying it's hard to know what to say right now. And he's admitting the reality. It might seem highly inappropriate to show you clothes that you don't need, but we've already made them. We've already taken the photos. We've already printed the catalogs. It was too late to stop. And that's starting with you language, and then it moves to we language. And then he's saying, we hope you don't find it horribly insensitive. And safety, of course, is our top priority. Well, that is a little bit of cheesy C19 cliche. And explaining that our office-based teams are working from home, which, yeah, we know that. You don't need to tell us. But it works because in brackets, you've got wearing Bowden from the waist up naturally. So there's the humour about how on video calls, the top half is in business wear and the bottom half is in yoga pants. And he ends with another bit of humour. Please look after yourselves. We don't need Johnny Bowden to tell us that really, but it goes with their little heart logo and their brand message. I really hope these clothes will cheer you up. So there's a nice positive thing with a U word and brackets with humour again. Frankly, that's what we all need.
Jonathan Wilcock recommends, going back to the point about finding work, makes a really good point that freelance job platforms are still worth a try. And he mentions Bark, Juno, and WorkCrowd, which are probably all focused on kind of a UK crowd. But if anyone else knows of any other good freelance job platforms, do please share. I could do with those myself. Upwork, yeah. I mean, I don't know if are these places useful? Are they kind of exploitative? Oh, Hannah. So the okay, we could get into some interesting debates about these different platforms. So the ones I just mentioned were Bark, Juno, and WorkCrowd. Although Olivia says Bark was terrible for her. So yeah, I mean, they can all be a bit hit and miss in my experience. Have you ever tried any of these, Jackie?
Well, I think when you're starting out, it can be worth trying them just to get things for your portfolio and testimonials, reviews, recommendations, because those you can then use to sell other services in the future. If you've got nothing in your portfolio, then it's a starting point. But the only one I tried was one who had posted a request for a chapter on the rough guide to Croydon. Well, I grew up fairly near Croydon. I'm very fond of it. And I thought that would be a very fun, challenging assignment. And so I pitched for it, and it went to someone in India because they were cheaper than me. And so I haven't gone down that route, but then I have the advantage of being quite established with a big word of mouth reputation profile already built, and that I completely recognise makes it easier for me than it does from somebody who's starting from absolute scratch.
Going back to the job platform question and these kind of freelance marketplaces, see, Joel makes the point that some of them lower the value of our work, and often the competition creates a race to the bottom in terms of price. And yes, that can be an issue for some of them. I think the ones Jonathan mentioned, like Juno, I'm familiar with. I think they tend to represent genuine, regular businesses that are used to paying proper rates. I think there's some of these other marketplaces where you're competing with just anyone all around the world. You could be up against like a student in the Philippines who's offering to work for almost nothing. But But yeah, so I think you have to choose carefully which of these platforms that you spend time with, because I've heard horror stories about Upwork.
But it links to a suggestion that I have about new services, which I don't know how many people offer. For example, I said reach out to people. There's an American expression I don't usually use. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, I said reconnect. There you are, the British equivalent. Reconnect with your existing network and have a genuine conversation with them, a bit like the Bowden style. And one of the things you could offer that perhaps they've never thought of that you could do, or you've never thought of that you could do, is offer to be their representative on a platform such as Quora. I don't know if you know Quora. Quora stands for questions or answers. And it's a social network where serious people ask good questions and people write answers for them. Well, if you've got a client or a niche where you're really expert, you could be the voice of your client and get involved in these conversations, which therefore drives traffic to their website. And it's just one suggestion of something different you could do that will help them build their reputation and help you generate a little bit of income. What I would say is there are always people that don't want to pay, or that want to screw down the cheapest price they can possibly get, but those aren't the clients you want. There will also always be people who do respect what a copywriter does and are willing to pay for it. Now, these are the people that know what copywriting is and know how to spell it and don't confuse it with copyright and trademark law. And they're generally people in the marketing world already. So when you do your perhaps second level searches on LinkedIn, rather than try and find end clients who might give you one job and then you never see them again for 2 or 3 years till they need you a second time, it can be good to try and build relationships with other people in the creative sector, which might be marketing agencies, web designers, graphic designers, illustrators, photographers, printers maybe, all those people that do the visuals, and you can do the words. And when you team up with them, between you can offer clients a 360-degree service that's going to get them better results from the design work, because the words will work too. And the designers will be pleased because they're getting paid more quickly, because when they depend on a client to provide copy, first of all, they generally don't provide very good quality copy, so it won't work, or maybe never provide it at all because they're too close to their business, they don't write about it well, they don't translate it into language their customers respond to, or they're just too busy with their core work that they never get around to writing the copy. So it's a win-win-win when you make joint ventures with other people in the sector.
I see Mel is asking what you think about offering services to agencies. She does some writing for agencies, but some of them don't pay much. They set the fee, not her. What do you reckon, Jackie, working for agencies?
I've only had one bad experience working for an agency where their contract with the client didn't protect me from non-payment. And so I am very careful as and when I do it to make sure that I get paid. So I would much rather contract direct with the client, even if it's been introduced through an agency, and then any chasing that needs to be done for payment is on my shoulders and not on the agency shoulders, who on this particular occasion didn't do it. But other than that, working with agencies I have found really good, because instead of just one piece of work, it's a regular supply of work. And the costs to you or your fees are probably going to be lower if you do work through an agency, because you don't have the overheads. They carry the overheads. So yes, rates are less working through agencies typically, but you do still have a bit of control when you're negotiating fees.
There can be a lot of positives to working with agencies. I think it's about which kind of agency it is, and the size of the agency and the people there. I mean, I've had some dealings with pretty awful agencies, really because the people at the top were not very nice. And then equally, I've had some long-standing relationships with really brilliant agencies. And I think for me, the good things are, people in agencies really understand what you're going to produce. You don't have to explain anything to them. They understand what you do. They understand it's not magic, that you don't produce kind of magical words, which I've found some clients expect. So they kind of understand what you're going to do. They're happy to pay, and they can also put you in touch with bigger clients. So some of the biggest clients I've worked with have all been through agencies, I think. So there can be a lot of positives. Again, I think there are some, say, SEO agencies where they're more about quantity than quality. It's often just about, pouring out tons of stuff.
I'll just share a couple of options. I've got a group on Facebook called Copywriter Club. It's not the Copywriter Club, which is run from the States. It was predominantly UK copywriters, but we have recently been accepting people from around the world, and there's more than 700 members now, and I've got some lovely people helping me to moderate comments so that it continues to add value. And I will regularly post copywriting tips and occasional job opportunities in there when I can. That's Copywriter Club on Facebook. This is something I was going to launch at the Pro Copywriting conference, which is penciled in for October, although who knows what's going to happen next month, never mind October. I know Leif will have something wonderful planned for everybody. But I'm doing a training day there. And at that training day, I'm going to launch a book about confident freelance copywriting. So if you would like to pre-register your interest in being told when this ebook is ready, which is full of lots of tips and advice about confident freelancing. I started it before the pandemic, but all the advice applies now. Then if you would email me, that's Jackie at jackiebarrie.com, I'll make sure you get notified. And the spelling of my name, in case you didn't know, Jackie, and then BARRIE.com. And be lovely to know from your survey how useful you found this.
So luckily nobody reported it as being soul crushing.
I'm delighted.
I'm deeply relieved to hear. So 3%, wasn't far off soul crushing. It's like somebody sat on it, but it wasn't crushed per se. So that's a relief. Wonderful. Let's see. So I think we're all out of time, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us and answering everyone's questions. And thank you to, we had about 50 to 60 people. So thank you all so much for coming along and posing your questions and also contributing your own tips and ideas. It's all very much appreciated. I hope everyone's staying healthy and well and still having some work to do. And thanks again, Jackie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.